Hello there, my name is David Pustansky and welcome to the Geek Battle Gaming YouTube channel. On today's review, we are going to be looking at Nessie the Robot for the Evercade VS. Now, Nessie the Robot is the second game of the monthly games as part of Blaze's Evercade VS promotion, where they're going to give you a free game to download as part of a monthly update, and at the end of this year in 2022 you'll be able to get the game physically on the Indie Heroes Collection number 2. Now, last month we had Tapeworm Disco Puzzle, and this month we have Nessie the Robot. Now, I'm not sure if it's pronounced Nessie the Robot or Nessie the Robot, because this is an indie game that was created to be played on original NES hardware, so that's the Nintendo Entertainment System, and this was originally called Nessy the NES Robot, or should that be Nessie the NES Robot? I don't know, but either way, you play as this little robot, which I think is supposed to look a little bit like a NES, like original Nintendo for a head. I'm not certain if that's the intention. I did look up a little bit about the history of the making of this, and apparently it took 3 years for the team that made it. I think it was mainly one guy that made it, and then some other people helped out along the way. And it's quite an achievement just in terms of this was one person made an NES game over the last 3 or so years. Now, I think this is quite a fun game to play, and it's a cool game to have as part of the Indie Heroes Collection number 2 that will be coming later this year. And it's a fun little game that you don't have to pay for, which you can get right now in this month of May 2022. If you're watching this video after May 2022, the only ways you'll be able to get this game is by waiting for the Indie Heroes Collection 2 Evercade cart to release later this year, or to be able to get this game from the internet, where you can get it on PC, or you can get it so that you can play it on like NES emulators, or you may even be able to get it so that you can put it onto a physical cart or a flash cart. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. Haven't really looked that part up. But what I can tell you is, whilst I was really happy with the game from last month, the Tapeworm Disco Puzzle, I do think that whilst this game is good, it's not as good as last month's game. And for the main reason is that I said last month's game, Tapeworm Disco Puzzle, was quite short. This game is really short. Like, there are probably about 6 or 7 levels to it. So when you play the game, it's a little platformer game, and you take Nessie the Robot and you go through levels and you end up facing a boss at the end of them. And there's a few different ideas in the levels, such as like bouncy platforms. You even have some characters you can talk to, and you can pick up some diamonds or rubies or gems of some kind. And there are a bunch of different enemies that you come across, including like snowmen, which melt down when you shoot them. It's a little bit like Mega Man in that sense, that you're platforming and you can like shoot as you go along. For me, this was, 1, very short, and 2, I felt like, unless there was something that I missed about it, and if I missed this in the game, then it wasn't clear. There are things you can collect, like these rubies, but you don't have to. I didn't see any point to actually collecting them at all. Maybe there was some secret, but I couldn't see that there were. I don't even think it's like on Mario or Sonic, where when you get like 50 or 100 that they give you an extra life, because it seemed like even though you could die, there wasn't like a life counter on this. Like, you could just keep replaying the levels no matter how many times you died, which in a sense feels a little bit weird on a retro style game like this, but it was also quite refreshing, because it also meant that you definitely could keep playing until you get through the game. Now, it took me, first time playing it, about just over 20 minutes to complete the game. And when I say complete the game, you go through about, again, 6 or 7 levels. It might be 6 main levels, and then like a special level that you unlock at the end to go against like the main boss. And then it unlocks like Negative World, and everything starts off looking in black and white, and there are like different rules to the way that you play through the entire game again. And when you play through the entire game again, like a second quest, it's a little bit like really retro platformers, where when you'd go to the edge of the screen, there wouldn't be any scrolling, and you'd like just the screen would flip to the next one. And let's think, there may have also not been any checkpoints. There was just some things to make it a bit more challenging. Not that it made it super challenging. And truthfully, this should have just been like a unlock mode, not something that you just play through after having just gone through all of these levels. I found that it became something that this doubles the length of the game, but it felt a bit repetitive that I'd seen all of these levels and enemies and bosses before. Now, I felt like some of the enemies, that when you defeated them, especially the boss enemies, when you defeat them, it just suddenly comes up course complete, and it doesn't show any animation to show that they explode. Like, you have a split second every time you defeat one where you don't know if it's that you've died. And like I said, there wasn't any point to killing the other enemies. You could just run past them, or picking up any of the gems, you could just run past them, which might make this a fun game for speedrunning, which is actually interesting, because I realised with this being one of the monthly games on the Evercade VS that there is a competition mode, which I'd completely missed on last month's game, and I gave it a go, and I played through the game by this stage for a third time. And I played through it until it got to like, now you're on negative world, and to be honest, I grew a little bit like I've done this game a little bit to death for this sitting. So I don't know, other than the fact that it displayed a graphic in the corner of the screen showing that, like a little trophy, that this is competition mode, so you can't use save states. I don't know what you gained by doing this. I don't know if there was like a high score, or that it like a best time or something comes up if you get all the way to the end, because I didn't go all the way through negative mode for the third time. It's a nice idea to have like this competition mode, but it needs to be clear, like, in what way is it a competition? How is it like keeping like your records compared to anyone else? If it is just literally that it displays this little trophy in the corner just so that when you're screen recording it, it seems a little bit of a redundancy, just because this little thing in the corner, if you wanted to, you could just crop the screen, because it was not on top of the gameplay. And even then, if you really wanted to go to the effort, you could just like crop that out and like stick it on as an overlay onto your stream if you wanted to cheat the system, as it were. Overall, I thought this game was fun for a little bit. I think it will seem better, like, this was a free game, so obviously it's excellent value, but I think as part of a paid package in the Indie Heroes Collection 2, I think this will seem like a fun little game, just as a game in its own right here, not taking into consideration that this was mostly made by one person. I'd say it doesn't hold up super well compared to other NES platformers from back in the day. It feels like it's a good basis for a game, but it's very lacking in content, very short, and like the level design is all quite fun, but it didn't seem like there was any point in picking up any of the collectibles. It didn't seem like there was any point in killing most of the bad guys, and that you could just skip past a lot of it. So I feel like there's just like a couple of things where it's like, okay, now this is being tested, you can get the feedback to make this a better game in the next version. So anyway, this is the review of Nessie the Robot. I'd say it's quite fun, but it's not something which I'd say you should be desperate to seek out to get on like a original NES cartridge, and it's not something I think that, you know, you necessarily feel that's been really worth it to seek out and pay elsewhere. But when it's part of the Indie Heroes Collection 2, then if that's got 10 or 12 games on it, then this will be a nice little addition to that. But don't get your hopes up too much. Like, I'll just say a couple of other things about it. Like, like I mentioned, there are characters you can meet. There's like a little purple bumblebee thing, and there's like a nice little joke in there that she's basically like Navi is to Link, and calls him like the blonde haired dude, and she gives like 2 or 3 hints throughout the game, but really there's not that much point in interacting with her. And then there's a few random dogs that you can speak to, and it just says bark or bork or something like this. And when I saw the end credits, I think that was a reference that the developer of this game had a dog that this may be dedicated to. So that I've got no problem with that, but there was no super purpose to interacting with any of these non-player characters. The final other thought I'll give, just because I'm rambling on here, is the different bosses. What seems like the final bad guy boss that you take on, not the final boss, but like the final bad guy who's like the villain behind it all, they were too easy to defeat. If you get, just so that they're coming towards you, as you shoot them, it will knock them back, and then they'll fire at you. And I just found really quickly that they were in a pattern that they would never be able to hit you. And for a final boss, I felt like that it was actually the easiest boss in the game. And then you get other bosses, and I didn't really think there was much rhyme or reason to what they were. There was just like a weird orb is bouncing around at you, I think, on the first world. Then it seems like there's like a jug or a cup of water on another one that's flying. And I didn't quite get why the bosses were who they were and what quite the world was that this was set in. But it's like an old NES game, and not everything made sense back then, so this is just me overthinking it now. When I finally like completed the game, I think it was doing like a Super Mario 64, where like the end screen just came up saying like well done. You saw like this big thing you go past saying thank you, and then it came up with like an end screen that I could not skip back to the main menu, and literally you did have to reset the game, which again, it was something that would sometimes happen in the past. Like the best example I can think of being Super Mario 64, where it's just like, thank you so much for playing our game, and then you have to crash it to reset the game and start it again, and that's fine. So again, final thoughts here. I'd say don't go in expecting this to be something where it's going to blow you away. It's a nice little fun game. You'll certainly have some fun playing it this month, and you'll probably complete it within 20 minutes or so. And then if you want to do like the negative world, you basically go through the whole thing again, just with like a few restrictions, which actually make the game feel, in my opinion, slightly less fun to play. And it's got a little bit more challenge because of it. And after that, the only thing really to do on it is competition mode, which you might bother to come back 2 or 3 times in a month, just if you want to speed run it, or whatever the purpose of competition mode is, because that wasn't clear to me, and I couldn't quite force myself to want to go through this all the way to the end of not just playing the main run through of the game, but then the negative world as well. So anyway, that's going to wrap things up for this review of Nessie the Robot, or Nessie the Robot, for the Evercade VS. Please do take a moment to smash that subscribe button on youtube.com/Geek Battle Gaming. This Geek Battle Gaming channel is one that I've been only working on over the last few months, and I want to thank everyone that's click subscribe so far. That's really cool, and we've had a load of great videos recently and a load of great comments and feedback, so do check out all of the other retro themed reviews we've got going on. And like, I've just done a documentary thing about the Intellivision Amico, a big review of the Amiga A500 Mini, some Atari VCS reviews, and of course lots of Evercade. Till next time, ciao for now.